Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Um, Shout out to Rondell, Carl, Rhoda, and Anne. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so while waiting for your classmates, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the book that I wrote. Some of you, if not all of you, have seen my book already, the contents and all. But of course, the articulation and how you would use this is not clear yet. So first, of course, it has the different parts of the instrument, the violin, the different sizes for the kids, depending on the age and the arm length, the size of the arm. And then, of course, part of the bow, and then the bridge. The bridges when one is not tailored or cut yet, and then the other one when it's already tailored or cut to the shape of your violin's belly. And then, of course, how to hold the violin, the proper posture, how to hold the bow and all. And then, yeah, so for lesson one, of course, you all start with the open strings. So zero, 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 and then the symbols, the down bow and the up bow. Yes. Okay. So although the different exercises here are written in different note files, like whole note, half, quarter, eighth, and 16th, you know my style already. Always start with whole notes only for all of the exercises. So the reason why I wrote this in the different note values so that the younger students, especially the kids, would already get familiar with how the notes look like, especially when it's really their very first start to play an instrument or play the violin or and read music, of course. So the articulation here, I'll just play a few notes or a few lines on how to do the exercise. First, if you don't know how to read music yet, of course, the first exercise is just to get familiar with all the open strings. I wrote down both the letter names and the solfa syllables, although I would ask you to actually use the solfa syllables because it's easier to memorize. You actually know it already, and it's easier to sing also. Because part of being a good violinist is actually when you know how to sing or when you can sing even without playing the instrument. If you could sing the notes, then you could play it on the violin, and vice versa. If you cannot play or if you cannot sing, the note or if you don't know the pitch by heart, if your brain cannot tell you how high or how low a note is or a pitch is, then you won't be able to play it on the violin. So to accomplish this, if you're a kid or if you have kids learning the instrument, you really have to let them see how the notes look like, where they're placed at on the staff, and then let them sing the pitch or the highness or lowness of the notes. So if the first note is G, you can ask the kid or you yourselves, if you're learning the violin, you have to sing along or at least hum the pitch. So that's what I do. I always sing so. It doesn't matter whether you're singing a higher or lower octave, as long as it's the same G. It's just G. So sol, sol. Too low for my voice, so I sing the octave higher. So, and then plant it there. All of them. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And then the next exercise, still the same, whole note. And then the next one, the notes just get faster, well, twice faster because they become half notes. But again, I told you earlier, you always start with 4 counts. So exercise 4, you're going to cross. This is the time when you will really focus on looking at the right elbow. It is best to practice in front of a mirror so you can see your reflection. This is a sample, and then. But you need to control the bow whenever you play fast-moving notes, like that one, because I played the 8 notes, so I only use this much bow and really have to be uniform. When you use the bow, make sure it's uniform. Why? For the uniformity of sound and good afternoon, everyone. Uniformity of sound, and also so that you could get the right sonority of the instrument. So when you glide it, measure how much bow you use on all the strings. So I want those too tight. So again. And you always have to tell the student, if you're a student, to lay the bow flat onto the string. Always flat for now. Once the right arm is ready, you won't have to ask the student, or you won't have to ask yourself actually to tilt the bow. It will just tilt naturally. So from here, from the frog, if it's an open string, and then frog. So that's part of the review. So this is just the first lesson in the book. There are other lessons, of course. Just to go over quickly, the first lesson is intended only for the open strings, to get familiarized with the open strings, both the intonation and how they look like, so visually and orally. And then, of course, there's always a recital piece at the end of every lesson. And then the next lesson would now talk about using only the pointer finger. So why is the method like this? It's difficult if you're going to memorize all the notes at the same time when the sharps and flats or the accidentals are already involved. And in order for you to be able to cite it in the future, you should know how to read sharps and flats. That is the reason why, at a very early stage, I already included the sharps and flats. And I haven't seen any book that would teach a student, especially a young child, to use the sharps and flats. But then for this methodology, since I'm using the 12-tone note scale, it is pertinent that the sharps and flats are introduced. Therefore, only using the first finger in this lesson, you're going to master all the flats and sharps on all the different strings. And then the next lessons, of course, they gradually become more difficult as you move forward. And I also put there like a tablature, but then no frets, because originally the violin doesn't have any frets at all. So it's just about measuring where to put your approximate measurement of where to place the fingers when you stop them as you play. So the next part, hi Charmaine and Ben. And then, of course, there you go. All the exercises here. And then, of course, the recital piece again. And next lesson would be the addition of the second finger. So 2 fingers now. You're trying to memorize the notes intended only for the first and second fingers for this exercise. And again, of course, there's a recital piece that you would only use two fingers, and so on until you reach the fourth finger or the pinky finger. And as you progress, I also added some more difficult techniques or a little bit more advanced that of course you need when you play and you want to make sure that the sound is smooth, so a little bit of legato signs and slurs, and of course the dynamics is very important, so there are also pieces that are played with lots of dynamics. And then exercises, solfege, that's the part where you don't play the notes actually, but you're going to sing them. So you're going to sing all the notes instead of playing them on the violin. And then at the end, once you're used to singing them, that's the only time you're going to play it on the violin. So, of course, there are Filipino folk songs as well as international folk songs and my own compositions. And then the more difficult stuff, my brother sings there. Um, yeah, towards the end, there are a lot of evaluation exercises. Yeah, my brother here, Yandel, is included in the book where he plays the koto, a Japanese instrument, but he doesn't play the instrument in real life. So there are a lot of pieces here as well as techniques for you to be able to learn the violin fast. So the last one, the concluding piece or recital piece is a musette by Johann Sebastian Bach. So yeah, so that if you're a Westerner, there's at least one piece that perhaps familiar to you. So that's the review. Maybe I would do also a session about how to use my book. There we go. So now I also have to review the proper way of holding the violin again, the posture, because there are always new students here, like complete beginners. So I always have to review the basics. Hopefully you don't mind. And yeah, yeah, for you also to review that. So when you hold the violin, the fingerboard and the body should be perpendicular to the ground, to the floor, or it's like writing an equal sign, two equidistant lines, and then the bow should also it should be perpendicular, so it should form a square. So from my elbow to the fingertips, up to half of the bow, and then from the strings to my neck. If you see there, I'm forming a square or 90-degree angle with my elbow. 90 degrees also with the hand to the what's called as the bow, the stick of the bow. So there. So if you're a complete beginner, of course, open strings. So when you glide the bow, flat bow, and put just a little bit of pressure. Although I normally don't say put pressure on it, uh, I would say drop the weight or drop the right shoulder, drop it down so that the weight of the arm is actually the one applied to the bow. So as you glide, you don't need to push it down anymore because the weight of the arm is already sufficient enough for it to have the right pressure. So just glide it on all the strings. Okay, and then of course all hair strands should be flat onto the strings. Don't forget that always flat until you reach maybe, because a lot of you are using that book. Once you reach the third position, that's the only time you can actually tilt a little bit. But for now, just flat bow. Okay, next, how do you stop the strings? Stopping is the term used when you press the strings down to the fingerboard. So I'll go this way so you can see. When you stop the note onto the string, all you need to do is drop the finger. The weight of the fingertip should be enough for you to have the right grip into the string. And then try making a little bit of sound by pulling the bone. This way, and then out. Just practice hammering your fingertips into the fingerboard. I recommend also the hammering exercise simply by the term itself, hammer. This is to strengthen your fingers for them to be able to play easily in the future, especially when you're playing running passages. So hammer it down. The wrist should not touch the neck of the instrument. It should be put away. So swing it backwards, but not too much, not a 90-degree angle, maybe 75 there. And then the fingers, when they stop the string, they should form a letter C. So they should be rounded, C, not straight. And avoid sausage fingers. Sausage fingers is actually the term I use when fingers move up like sausages. You cannot bend them; they're almost like sausages. There. So when you stop the string, don't lift the fingers. Keep them there. Keep your fingers onto the string. Okay, and more pointers. Yeah. So another pointer, when your fingers or when your hand is actually onto the E string, the shoulder, no, sorry, not the shoulder, the elbow, the left elbow should point downwards, directly downwards to the ground. And then A, you lift it a little bit higher, and then here. So it's the elbow now is pointing almost towards your front when you're applying onto the G string. So how will you measure that? The thing I do, or when I was exploring, I just had to put all my fingers onto the string. There. So put them all on the string. Then automatically your arm would have to place itself, how it would be able to handle stopping the strings with all the fingers. So all the fingers there. And again, the exercise, the spider exercise. How do you see this? And back. And then I also do the giant leap. There, G to E, oh, sorry, G to E, and then E to G. Okay, so now, yeah, so earlier I talked to a student also who's having troubles with the positioning of the instrument because he doesn't have the shoulder rest. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I already discussed this before. So when you place when you place your violin without the shoulder rest, all you need to do is, of course, the chin has to hold the chin rest. So for sure, it will point downwards. Now all you need to do is to hold, not really hold, or touch the neck of the instrument, and then push it towards your back until it becomes parallel to the ground. There. So the violin should not point to the front and to the ground. Instead, it should be moved. It should be moved here to the left, to your left. Don't raise the left shoulder up. That's not right. Once you lift any of the shoulders, it will tire you easily. So here, I hope you can see my shoulder. I'm not moving my shoulder. This is my finger pushing the neck of the instrument. So here, and then back. So without shoulder rest, you can actually play the violin too. So it will sound more natural, but then it will require practice. During my whole college days, I never used the shoulder rest, but now I'm getting older, so I think I need to use one. Now, Okay, so now we have to move to the lesson proper. So the lesson is about octaves. Of course, we have to start with the beginner style of doing octaves. Of course, we're not going to the octaves like how you see them when played in the concerto. So as a beginner, you only need to do, let's say, three chromatic notes, 3 to 4, if you're a beginner. So let's start with the G and D strings, G, and of course an octave, then the third finger to the D string to sound another G. But it's not gonna be perfect right away. When you play like, let's say for example, it's not perfect. So then the third finger, because you're a beginner, you cannot tell if the note is correct. Yeah. This is always the problem for beginners when they go to this kind of exercise. When they said it's a double stop and it's an octave, they would play the two notes at the same time simultaneously right away. And then they would be having troubles figuring out which one is not in tune. Of course, it has to be the one with the finger note because the open string must be in tune. So the first thing you should do is play first the open string and then place your third finger after that and then play them together. Let's say, for example, it's too high. Then you have to lift that finger, lift it off, and then put it down. You cannot just slide them down and up because the muscle memory would be for the wrong note first. Because it's always the initial attack that would be determined about the memorization of your fingers or your muscles. So once you put it down and it's wrong, lift it off. So, so what I devised before when I was still learning is to play first the lower note and then the higher note and then together. Or lower note and then two strings at the same time afterwards. When you're getting better already, so first lower, upper, and then together. Then together. And then really simultaneous. Next, the pointer finger goes to G sharp. Of course, the pinky finger goes right next to the third finger. So, same technique. And together. So first open. And then try moving the hand wide ahead because you cannot leave any of the fingers behind. When you move, it has to be the entire hand or actually the arm. So move. Now, the trick to moving the octaves is to help the pinky with the use of the third finger, because naturally our pinkies are really weak. They're not as strong as the rest of the fingers. They're really tiny. Their muscles are not as thick as the rest of the fingers. So what I do is I always put I'm pinky. There, I always put my third finger right next to the pinky. So, as support. Actually, it's the third finger that pushes the pinky up or down. So that's the pitch now. Now, if you want to move half a step higher, move your hand uh, up there at the same time. So for a beginner, you would only go up once. Then go back. And then faster. And then even faster if you want. And then so, for a beginner, the crucial part is how to move the hand. That's why the exercise I'm giving is just to move from one spot, from one place to another. This is enough already for beginners, just for the fingers to get stronger. Some have shorter thumbs, so put them there. And of course, no pressure at all or very minimal. If you really can avoid to add pressure, just a little bit. It can be positioned like this or like that. It has to be straight. Once you get used to that pattern, you can cross to the next string. And next. Of course, as you advance, it gets easier. But that's all you need to learn as a beginner. Now, if you're an intermediate, you need to start learning the scale, doing the double stops. So. So the same technique, if you're going to play a scale, always start with the open string again, and then, if you're starting with if you're playing a G scale, but then if it's an A or any note that is not starting in an open string, you have to always start at the lower note. So instead of doing that's only for advanced, so don't do that yet. So 0, and then again, then 8. So. Then cross to the next. That's enough for now, and then you go down. Okay, so of course you'll have to play that slowly. This is the most crucial thing also. When you play octaves or scales, no vibrato, you don't vibrate, or else you're cheating yourself. Your muscles will not memorize the exact location where they should be at. So, once you're used to it, that's the only time you can move forward by playing simultaneous strings. if you are now, let's say, you're getting more advanced, it's getting easier and easier. Then try doing just on A and E strings, just do the chromatic scale. So if you notice, my third finger was there all the time. Why? Again, to support my pinky. So it's always there. The third finger is the key for you to tune the pinky easily. So don't forget that. The moment you start playing octaves, the third finger has to be there to support the pinky. And remember also that when you move, it should be like it's locked. You need to lock your fingers. They have to be strong, or else if they move a little bit too close to each other or with each other, they start to get off. The pitches would become something like this. You don't want that. So lock your fingers there. Not really lock that you cannot move anymore, but a firm grip into the string. I should not use the word lock. So firm grip so that you don't lose the distance. Actually, as you move toward the bridge, towards the bridge, you're slightly moving the fingers closer to each other, slightly. So something. So slightly moving, it's like this, moving closer and closer and closer and closer. I don't use the middle finger. I put it up a little bit because it gets in the way. Once I'm here, the higher positions, this will really get in the way. So even as low as here, I avoid this finger already from pointing to that string also. So I lift it up a little bit. So. And then if you're really advanced and you've mastered the octaves with the 1 and 4 or the pointer and the pinky finger, it's time to move on to the next level. It's the use of the pointer and the third finger alternately with the second and the fourth. So 1, then 1 and 3, and then 1 and 3 again. And then starting here on B, when you go to C, you're going to stop the A string with the second finger and the E string with the pinky finger. So and shift 1 and 3 again. So it's like moving. So there will be concertos in the future where playing octaves between the 1 and 3 and 2 and 4. But of course, not as early as now. So I just showed you how it's done. Now we have to go back to the exercises for the beginner. So again, I told you only 3 or between 3 to 4 notes only when you're just starting. So again, 0 and then the third finger, but this time on D string. So you need to listen carefully. They need to blend. If they don't harmonize, then they're not in tune. They should sound as one, but then the feels like they're much thicker. The two notes simultaneously played should sound like it's just a big, a huge note. If it sounds like two different notes, then for sure you're not in tune. So if it would sound like this, I hear two notes, then I'm not in tune. So now, yeah, put down the pointer finger. Now it sounds like the two strings are sounding just one note, but then thick, really thick. And then with the pinky right beside it, and then the pointer finger right next to the here at the end. And back. So remember, the two notes should sound as one. They should really harmonize. That's a beginner's octave. Or you can do different patterns also instead of just two. You can do at the same time you're practicing the elbow and the use of bow. Because of course, bottom line you should be able to play as relaxed as you can. So and then next string. So, in playing octaves again, you need to remember the tones should sound as one. They should harmonize like it's a one huge, thick note. So, once you got used to doing the separate ones, you can play them now simultaneously. So. With this exercise, you will actually force your hand and your fingers to get strong fast. So when you try practicing this, I actually advise now, if you can, just be very cautious when you're moving from one place to another. So again, you have to measure this uh, perfectly here and there. When you move, you have to move at the same time. And how do you move the pinky? Actually, you're not moving the pinky. You're pushing the pinky with the third finger. That's how you move the pinky. Push it with the third finger. So, now push. And once you progress, or once it gets easy, then add another note. So maybe another half step. easier. It's getting easier. Then add another half step. And so on and so forth. So you always start with just the basics, just three notes, 0, 1, and the 1 with a shift. And then you go backwards. So 0, 1, 1, or 0, 4, 4, 4, 3. That's the basic. And back. Okay, so at this point in time, you can ask questions because our lesson is only about the octaves and how you practice. So you can ask according to your level. So two people were late. Yeah, so questions. I'm here to answer your questions. If there are complete beginners here, if you have questions about how to play, just ask me also. But for advanced ones, we're only going to tackle the octaves today. So I'm waiting for questions now. If you're a beginner, if you have problems or troubles doing the bowings or perhaps placing or stopping the notes, you can ask. If you're advanced, it has to be related to the lesson. So quiet. So for the late comers, of course, you heard about the beginner exercises. For the intermediate or the ones in the middle, you have to do the scale already. So again, with the help of the third finger, instead of doing the chromatic, you do the full scale, major scale. And then simultaneously. Okay, and then if you're an advanced student, go to A and E strings and start doing the chromatic scale again, but this time as high as you can. As high as you can. Again, with the third finger supporting the pinky, but the middle finger getting out of the way. So there's a question here. This is what, yeah. The term stopping is actually the pressing down of the finger to a string to produce a particular the specific pitch you need. So this is called stop. So if you're stopping only one string, you just stop one string. If you're pressing two strings at the same time, then that's double stopping. If you're pressing three strings at the same time, then you're pressing, and then it's called triple stopping or already chord. And there are full chords also wherein you're going to press onto four strings. Yes, and then, okay. Yes, there are students who have really huge fingertips. Well, it's not really a disadvantage because when you're playing an open string, you can actually move. For example, my pointer finger is as thick as my thumb. If I want to avoid the G string from being touched, I'm going to press the A and the D strings, so that the pressure would be transferred to those strings, avoiding the G string. So normally, if you're going to play the exercise I just shown you earlier, you would only play the G and D strings anyway. So you transfer the rest of your flesh to the other string. So put it there. You're already avoiding the open G string. Now the third finger may also be as thick as your thumb or even thicker, then might as well press the two higher strings. Then you're avoiding the open string. So it's the only way, it's actually the only way to do that. Because I also have, well, all violinists would have problems, especially with the pointer finger in first position here. Because there's no way you would only press one string. There's always a chance that you'll be touching other strings. So it's just a matter of what strings do you want to stop. Of course, you need to avoid the open ones. So down here, oh, up here, I mean, avoiding the G. And then like that, if you're avoiding the D and all. So, other questions? Yeah, if you're doing hand washing, I guess it would be a problem if you're going to practice this right away. So perhaps wait about 30 minutes or an hour before you start practice, or better yet, practice before you do your hand washing. Uh, yes, when we're doing double stops, you have to determine first what note you are playing. So now, for example, I'm playing the G open string and the D with the third finger. So, which one, which note? No, let's say the G sharp and the higher octave, G sharp. Of course, the pointer finger is now pressing or stopping two fingers, two strings. Where would you transfer the pressure? Of course, you have to use a little bit of intuition. You need the sound of the G string. Where would you focus your strength or your energy on? You have to focus onto the G string, even if you're stopping two strings at the same time. Now here, since the pink is not as thick as the pointer, and there's actually more space between those two strings if you're up here, then it's not actually a problem. But there's always a tendency for you to touch also the A string. It doesn't matter. You're not playing the A string anyway. So just put down the pinky finger there and then focus your energy onto the D string. Now here, focus your energy onto the G string, even if you're pressing or stopping two strings. So, because if you don't, if you're focusing, if the pointer finger is focused onto the D string, this would be the sound. You hear that? It will sound flat. So, so actually, even um, for you as a beginner, you're already doing double stops. But it's only a matter of knowing what note or what particular string needs to be focused on. So you have to know what you're playing or what notes you are playing. So, another question is, yeah, how do you fix the scratchy sound when playing fast? The scratchy sound near the bridge. So near the bridge, you mean the bow near the bridge or your fingers close to the bridge? An E string is my favorite when I play high notes. I normally position my bow really close to the bridge and then I put a big bite or I really bite the string so that I don't produce the scratchy sound. Instead, I produce a big sound, a bigger sound. So, not scratch as long as you can control the use of bow. So in one of our sessions, I demonstrated how you could practice or how you would play onto the E string, well, and N strings, with the use of just the frog. So just lay it down onto the string this way so you can see. Just put it down, just pull it, and then pull without a scratch. But it's important that the right shoulder is really relaxed. The weight should be down. So drop both shoulders down. And now just place the bow on top. And then just pull the bow. Yeah. Without a scratchy sound. I keep on telling you to press it down, but this time, for this exercise, you only need to let the string ring without the bite sound. So, there. And when the fingers are close to the bridge, yeah, you can only play crisp notes when your fingers are strong enough to play them. It's the reason why I ask everyone to always do techniques, practice their techniques, because if your fingers cannot produce like a kilogram of hammering sound, you won't be able to play crisp sound up here without producing scratches. So if your fingers are weak, that's always the result. Because actually your fingers cannot press down or stop down totally. Your fingers should be able to touch the wood when you play uphill. It should press down to the wood. If your fingers are not strong enough, listen to the sound. So scratchy. But if your fingers are strong enough, they could play as high as you want without a scratch. But if they're weak, that's the resulting sound. So again, go back to the basics. Strengthen those fingers. Uh, yeah. So try that. Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, I used the wrong word earlier about lock. So how to avoid it? The technique or the secret is for your thumb to unlock. So this is the key. You need to lessen the pressure you're applying with the thumb to the fingerboard or to the neck of the instrument. If this is really stiff, the rest of the fingers would get stiffer. So relax, or else you won't be able to move the fingers. They won't get flexible at all. So it boils down to how flexible your thumb is. So don't forget that. If fingers are locking, it's because of the thumb. Well, I would say maybe 90%, or sometimes maybe you need to practice more septic in your during your free time. But aside from that, take note of what the thumb is doing. So always focus your attention there when one finger, one or two fingers start locking. Okay, what else? Uh, I don't know if I answered your question correctly, Rhoda. Um, where to place what? Is it the bow or the fingers for double stops? So about if it's about the bow, you need to even out the transfer of the pressure. Not one string should be getting more pressure than the other when you're doing double stops. Both of them should get equally the same amount, equal amount of pressure when you're doing the double stops. If not, this will be the resulting sound. Sometimes you will touch the other string, sometimes you don't. But there's always one note that is played loudly. So you don't want that. It's like there's one that's escaping or being the sound is like being suffocated, like that. So you need to place the bow right in between, right in the middle between those two strings. Again, it boils down to practicing the open strings again. Even if, just, even if you're just doing open strings. It's very important to practice transferring the sound, the bow, and you need to listen to the sound. Um, Being an artist, a violinist, I would say, well, more of an artist, is really trying to distinguish between the correct sound or the proper, or the sound with more statics, with more beauty to it than just playing notes. So you're the one responsible for the sound that your instrument produces. You're actually the one producing the sound. Therefore, you need to listen very well. Listen carefully. Would you like this kind of sound? Or, or maybe just an open sound. So that's where your maturity will come out. So other questions? Questions? Welcome. Ask your questions now related to the topic, of course. If you're a beginner, you can shoot your question right away, whatever it is. But for more advanced, intermediate, yeah, I have to stay um, to the topic. So, welcome, Lay or Lai. So, questions, more questions? Going once, going twice. Hi, Charmaine. Questions? This is my favorite part of the session, answering your questions. Yeah. How long should I practice in? Yeah, well, it depends on your goal. It always boils down to the to your goal. If your goal is just a so-so goal, I would say maybe just a few minutes. But there's always the question that's very difficult to answer because you're asking a question that's very specific. Very specific. Um, my answer to my students always that if you think you're ready for the technique that you are practicing, then your practice is enough. But then if you don't feel that is sufficient yet, then perhaps you can continue tomorrow or just continue practicing. For me, I didn't actually time my practices when I was in college, or let's just say when I was starting to learn the instrument. Uh, when I was learning, I do not stop unless I get the technique right, even if it's just one exercise. So if I don't get the technique for the day, I would be so embarrassed with myself. That means that my brain and my muscles cannot grasp the very technique that I needed. So I always try to find a way how to get the technique. On a daily basis, back then, during my college days, I would always have to fix something. So when you practice, you always have to have a goal. Uh, when you set a goal for the day, it doesn't have to be that high. Set it only this low. So once you reach it, then you have that feeling of accomplishment, and you'd be very happy that you did something right. But then, if you set your goal up here, you will never be content with your playing. So, just to have a little figure to how long you should practice the octaves as a beginner, it's still very difficult. So, let's just say between 30 to 45. Once you get tired or once you feel a little bit of tension or tensed muscles, you stop right away, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes. You always have to stop and rest. You need to have a pause before continuing to practice again. Because a lot of pressure is being added or being applied when you play, and you're also exhausting your ligaments, those muscles there, they need to rest. And remember, whenever we do something, it's always when we're doing household chores or anything that involves only the arms, we always use a lot of muscles. But then when we're playing an instrument, specifically violin, we segregate those muscles. We only play using the muscles for the pinky when we're using the pinky. So there's a lot of trauma already for the pinky to be playing for a very long period of time. Let's add the individual the muscles for this, for that, and for here and for those. When you're playing an instrument, all the fine muscles are working. When you're doing household chores, only the bigger muscles are working. Okay? Whenever you carry something, it's always held with all your fingers and thumbs. But when you're playing a musical instrument, it's like carrying a pail of water with just a pinky or with just the ring finger. So you'll have to gauge for yourself how long you should practice. It's your body. You have to listen to your body because if you don't, because well, we have different thresholds of how long or how fast we get tired. Um, yeah, I'm talking so much already. Yeah, I think you get my point. So, in practicing an instrument, you should not be reliant onto the figures, the numbers, numbers of minutes or hours. It's about the goal you set before you started the practice or playing. And then, yes, it's very subjective. So, what else? Um, Self check, you have plenty of double stops there, but for the octaves, yeah, it's still there. Self check, part one, opus one, there's also the opus one, part four, that's intended for the for chords and double stops and all those hard positions. That's actually for the more advanced ones. And of course, one of the most difficult books you would want to learn in the future, or you might want to hate, you might hate in the future is the car flash. That's where actually you would encounter the 1 3 octaves, 1 3 2 4, 1 3 2 4 that I showed you earlier. So the 1 3, so 1 3 2 4, 1 3 2 4. So yeah, but too early for you to do car flash at the moment. So yeah, just be careful with the. Okay. So in the future lessons, I would have to give exercises already on how to do vibratos, finger. Normally, if you're doing, if the notes are moving fast, you only need to do finger vibratos. So you can actually add vibrato to 16th notes with just the finger. And then the one I did earlier was the hand. So, and then if you want to be uh, more of a gypsy sound, so you will be using a lot of R for your vibrato. So I think that will be the next lesson, and it's yeah, that's for September. Yeah, the first lesson for September will be the application of vibrato, because you can vibrate, you can apply the technique onto the exercises you're doing, but only for scales for now, and only when you've perfected the intonation or the right pitches. Once you're familiar with them, that's the only time you can apply the vibrato. So for now, not yet. Yeah, because you should be able to control your vibrato. So it's not vibrato is not just shaking your fingers. It's not just that. You need to shake it. Vibrato is an embellishment if used correctly. If not, then it would sound a disaster. So like when you're doing, what if you're doing, doesn't say anything at all. So if you're going to vibrate the notes, make sure you give justice to it. When you play, the violin has to sing. If you cannot use the vibrato properly or correctly, then just avoid it. You'll just ruin your sound. The piece itself would be ruined if you cannot use the proper, or if you cannot execute the vibratos properly. So, more questions? So the one I played earlier is actually the theme song of one of the cartoon series when I was in high school. I think it was Segi. Questions? No more questions. Okay, since there are no more questions, next lesson, of course, would be again next. Yeah, so would be next Friday. Now that's for vibrato. Hopefully, there will be more students next time ready. And yeah, so we'll see you next week. Thank you, everyone, for staying. Some here are just supporters, some very good friends, even if they don't play an instrument at all. They're just here to support. Yeah, Charmaine and the other guys earlier. Thank you, everyone. Next time would be fun. It might take a longer period because it will require a lot of exercises. It's about vibrato. Car flash, not yet. Too advanced for everyone. Okay, so I'll have to end the stream. Thank you for being there again. Yeah, you can always do a replay, a review of the past sessions to help you with your playing. So whenever you forget something, yes, always, it's just there. You just need to look it up. Okay, so thank you everyone. Until next Friday. Bye bye.